Hi, this is Greg Lewis, City Manager here in Lebanon, New Hampshire, and welcome to Lebanon in Depth. This is really a fabulous day for me because, again, I get a chance to, what I call it's kind of the constellation of stars we have in the private sector in our community. And we just, if you don't realize how many really bright, shining stars we have in our private sector community here, you should take some time and explore that. And I have been doing listening sessions, and I've had the opportunity to visit our local companies and organizations, and it is just an eye-opener. And so when I see a star burning brightly, I like to have them come on the show. And today, well, the name Dymatix goes back a ways in our community historically, and we've added by the merging a new beautiful sounding name, Fuji, and I don't know if I correctly pronounced that, but I have with us their operational leader here in our community, Jeff Horten, and I welcome you.
Thank you, Greg.
Welcome
Good
you.
To be here.
It's great, and I advised Jeff ahead of time. We always talk about ourselves a little bit, so that we could let people know, we are human beings here. We're not just figments of your imagination on this television set. And so, Jeff, how in the world did you kind of wind into this leadership position you're in here, and what's your interests?
Well, my career actually started out of college in Ohio. I left Ohio back in '81 and came out to the East Coast. So the first 8 years of my career I spent down in Massachusetts with Raytheon in the military electronics business. I left Raytheon because I wanted to get into commercial business, so I went to work in automation, heavily into automotive industry. Spent 7 years in automotive working for a company called Schneider Automation, also down in the Massachusetts area.
Okay.
Left them in '96 to go do a startup. I always had an interest in a startup. So we did a startup in Connecticut. It was fun, it was interesting, it was thrilling, it was anxiety driving, and just about it. It was definitely all of that.
High anxiety. Okay.
It was definitely there, and that lasted 3 years. We didn't quite make the turn, but after that, I started investigating opportunities and became aware of, at the time, it was called Spectra up here. This was in 1999. Upon investigating their technology, decided to come up here. They weren't much more than a startup at the time. They were about $15 million in sales. We decided to come up and see if that would work, and I've been up here for 15 years since then.
That's great. That's great. And how do you find living in this area from your perspective?
It was interesting because I had always lived in larger cities down in Massachusetts and in Ohio where I grew up. Yeah. So it was a transition, but it was a fun transition.
Yeah.
And I think after the first year, we felt extremely comfortable. We never missed the traffic down in Boston.
No, I don't. My son went to Boston University, and I'd have to do those treks down there. And I was living in Minnesota at the time,
awful.
And I was really lost at sea.
It's awful.
I was terrorized, and of course he takes it with a great. He's just perfect. Oh, that's
Sure.
fine, Dad.
Yeah, it's secondhand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was an easy transition. I've got two boys. They're both. One's out of college, one's in college, and they absolutely thrived up here. So it was maybe the best decision I've made in my life.
Well, that's terrific. I'm so glad you made that. I mean, our community is pleased to have people like you come up and become our leaders. I know you touched on the history. Why don't we delve in a little more of the history of the company? And it's fascinating how these very important companies evolve from sometimes one person's thought into wow, it's global.
Right. This one does have a nice Upper Valley history. Many of your listeners may be aware of Criari on Etna Road. Criari really birthed what we are today, just like they birthed Hypotherm. So two of the biggest companies in the Upper Valley can look back to Criari as their benefactor of a sense, which is kind of interesting when people think about it. 6 guys broke off from Criari in about 1984, 1985. Those 6 guys created what was then Spectra. And Spectra had a very inauspicious beginning. These guys were trying to take technology and inkjet and birth it in a sense that it hadn't been birthed before. They struggled in the early years. My understanding is between 84 and 90, it was challenging. In 1990, they had gotten up to 100 people, and then they ran into some severe difficulties, and they had to drop all the way back to around 22 or 24 people.
Wow.
And it was hand to mouth for several years after that. And their big breakthrough came in the mid-90s when Markham, down in southern New Hampshire, in Keene, which was a big company, bought Spectra and started to invest in Spectra between 1995 or 96 when they bought them. They started to invest many millions into them. When I came onto the scene, I was first a customer in 1996, and I saw what their potential was. That was that startup I was doing. And even when the startup failed, I talked to these guys about where they were going to go from here. And I was convinced that they had an interesting opportunity. Markham was a strong benefactor to them. And after 1999, we were maybe $15 million in sales, and we've grown 10 or 15 times from that since then. So it's been an interesting ride. Between 1999 when I came and 2006, several things happened. The first was we got a new president. John Batterton started in, I want to say, 2001. John was tasked by Markham to build the business and eventually position it for either a spin-off as its own standalone company or for sale. That was Markham's thought for a long time. So John purchased a silicon fab out in Silicon Valley in 2002, and we started to marry what was going on here in New Hampshire with silicon business out in California. In 2005, we changed our name from Spectra to Dymatix, and the thought process there was to tell people that we were in the digital materials industry. Dymatix was born of that. And then
digital age.
Digital age, exactly. So in 2006, then Markham was considering either going public with us and spinning us off, or selling us. They got a great offer from FUJIFILM at the time, and that's how FUJIFILM and Dymatix came together, as you said. And since 2006, Fuji's owned us, and they've invested a large amount of money in our capabilities. Much of our technology, much of it in California, they've used to build products that they've brought to market. And I think it's been a marriage that I would have to say is as close to perfect as you can come. So that's a little picture of our history.
Well, you know, that's really incredible when you see that, you know, the up and down there, and then the hit, you know, the drive and perseverance that had to be shown by those that are in leadership positions, and the workers who had to, you know, carry out and follow, you know, probably some new thinking.
Very much.
And try and, you know, being nimble enough to move through this whole thing.
Right.
That's quite
it was interesting.
Quite a challenge and quite an endeavor. A great opportunity. Now, if we were going to talk about some important events in the life of the company, and I wondered how you would characterize, you know, some of the things that, you know, strike you over the years as.
Wow, there's so many of them. To pick out a couple that really strike me, certainly Fuji's purchase of us opened up our abilities because of added cash flow to what we might want to do, and they definitely fostered growth. That was huge. I think the investment we made in 2001 in our silicon fab in Silicon Valley was huge. We were way ahead of the marketplace in identifying silicon as a key material set as industrial inkjet started to grow. I would say in many senses we're 5 years ahead of our competition on that front, and that was because of the foresight that John Batterton and others had back in 2000.
He could see something out there. He could see a vision thing. He could see some sort of preferred future that people would look at. And it's amazing how some people have insight like that.
Absolutely. It was critical to our future, and as a result of those early choices, I would say we have a very nice niche in the marketplace, and we also have a lead on our competition in certain elements that we're able to leverage.
You know, because when I was trolling through the various linkages in the websites as I was looking at it, and I've been looking at it for several. Well, so we had a meeting a while back, and then we were kind enough to agree to come on the show, and I think it's just fascinating. You know, I was looking at the West Coast, you know, the silicon connection, as you were mentioning, in our connection. And I hear, you know, it's really interesting how these places, these important of place, that these places have that's just the right types of elements that come together, and in the Upper Valley, and then out there in Silicon, and add that feature. And then I started migrating out to the different locations of Fuji and looking at them all over the globe. and yet realizing they came here and they are part of us.
They are.
And you're part of them, and that's quite a story.
It is a
that is a
story.
story. If you back away and look at it, from, that's a very, seems to be, that how could people, the people, early founders, could thought that this would be the case, that this is how the Upper Valley would find itself, and it's remarkable.
It is remarkable. Yeah.
It's just remarkable.
Well, it talks to how small the world is nowadays.
Yeah. They said the world's flat, the world's small world now, and what we do here is affects somebody else, and what they're doing there affects us.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we can't isolate ourselves or silo ourselves up to be so narrow and so parochial.
I think most people, if they look at Hypotherm and they look at Fujifilm Dimatix, as you said at the onset, probably are starting to realize they have two wonderful diamonds here on the Upper Valley that are world-renowned, world-renowned. We tell our employees one of our greatest opportunities is to be number one in the world at something. Think about that.
Yeah.
Number one in the world.
That's special.
That's special, and it's right here on Etna Road.
Yeah. It is so special.
Yeah.
And I really love that. I really love that story. That kind of touches me. It's so wonderful. And I guess it's the evolution of the thinking here behind the leadership and the people that are involved so much in this, about the vision and mission of the company. How would you describe, well, I guess the vision is always what's going to be the future. The mission is, here we have to have the drive to do this particular thing. If you're going to characterize,
well, our vision is actually very much tied to what I just said. We have a very clear mission and vision, and it's to be number one in the world in industrial inkjet. Number one, not two or three, but one. And when you think about that, you have to think about not only the products, but the markets, because the markets vary, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on today.
I would like
to. Certainly advertising, printing tiles, we'll talk a little bit about that, textile, packaging. These are our four major markets, and each brings a very different challenge to our company, but we want to be number one in all those markets. We also want to be viewed by our customers as having the most robust and long-lasting product in the marketplace. That's what we want people to think about when they think of Dymatix, that boy, that product is quality-wise the best there is out there. And that's a real simple vision that we communicate to our employees, and every day we go in the building, we think about that. Top quality, number one in our chosen markets. It's simple, it's crisp, yet it's something to hang your hat on.
Yeah, and what's going to take for you to achieve that?
It starts and ends with people, Greg, to be honest with you. When you were visiting our company several weeks or months ago, we had talked about how we're trying to draw people into our business, right? I can't tell the public here in the Upper Valley enough about our culture is such that people matter first, second, and third. It really is the only way you're going to have an opportunity for success. You still have to design the right products for the right markets. You still have to have strategies with those products through marketing, through business development. But if you don't get the right people, you can't even get past first base. So we spend a great deal of time searching the globe for very unique specialties, very unique skill sets, and we try and induce them to come here to the Upper Valley. In some cases, as I shared with you when you were there, we've also crafted strategies where we're trying to grow our own skill sets. So we very much have linked with several colleges up here in the New Hampshire and Vermont area, and we try and bring in their best talent. We go to them and we tie them up when they're sophomores and juniors with internships. And then when they become seniors, we try and convince them that they have to come and be part of our opportunity to be number one in the world. But it all starts with people.
That's great. Now, I have 3 children, and I'm sure that all our residents have children, have nephews, have nieces, and what would you tell them if you were going to, if they said, boy, I wish my daughter or my son could work for a company like your company? Where do they get how do they get there to reach the threshold of the competencies that you're looking for, so that it's a good marriage a good match for both them and for you?
Yeah.
What would you say to them I'm always telling my kids, we got to get a job, and
Don't we all?
we got to get a job here.
I've told mine that
I mean,
too.
it's all fun and it's good. You get good grades, but we got to get a job. But what would you say to them? What's the expectations that you think would make where it's a mutual match?
It's a real good question. I think when I look at people, it's a huge spectrum, right, from A to Z. But there are definitely attributes that I think our company finds endearing in people we want to bring into our building. And number one is attitude. You have to have an attitude that says, my glass is always half full, because it's contagious. When you're working with a campus like we have here of, say, 400 to 500 people, it's imperative that everybody on that campus understands that we must excel, we must hold each other accountable, and we must have constructive ways to hold each other accountable, not destructive. But the attitude is critical. Coming into that and saying, I want to be the best at something. I have a passion to be the best. And I love being part of an organization that recognizes excellence, recognizes that I can bring something special to them to help that campus of 500 people achieve a common goal, which is awfully hard, right?
Yes,
so that's what I tell people that come in. Bring me your best attitude, bring me aptitude, bring me an eagerness to want to learn and to try different things, because I'm going to move you all over that building. I'm going to try you in this piece, and this piece, and this piece. And if you talk to some of our folks that work for us, we've got people right now in China that have never left the U.S. They came to work for us from Enfield or Claremont or right here in Lebanon or Hanover, had no idea that they'd have an opportunity after being here for several years to go into a service organization and go over to China and work in a factory of 50,000 people. They had no idea, and now that's where they're at. That's what I'm looking for, somebody that's willing to really take chances and really show me that they want to shine.
Isn't that incredible? Because I'm similar, looking for the right people, because that really is everything.
Critical.
Everything. And I always talk about, I'm looking for focus. I'm looking for someone with focus, and how they're going to exert that focus. And I'm looking for somebody that's flexible. Like when you're talking about moving around the building, this isn't a place where you go over there and sit in that room do this. I mean, that's just not going. That's not the world that we live in today, and to be successful. And then I always talk about being friendly. The kind of attitude you have to be friendly, because if you don't have that skills in terms of that interconnection and communication, it's impossible to deal in our world without that sort of thing. And then we've got to be fast.
You do.
We got to be fast, because we can't. The slow walking thing through. I know political people slow walk. Well, we'll slow walk this over here, and I think that's just appalling. I find that just appalling to watch them slow. And I guess in your world of the private sector leadership, in my world of local government, I think we need to move faster, and because our communities, we're right at the grassroots. We're right with you're with your customers, you're with your people, and we're with those citizens, those residents that live here, and we're not over in Concord or in D.C. or anywhere. We're right here, and we're very much in the moment, and we've got to find a way to be that way. We can't be the old way. It's just non-functional. People won't accept that.
Right.
People just won't accept. They won't get the idea of a robust product. That was really neat. I mean,
it's critical.
And it's critical, because I will go, a mile on my way for a robust product.
I feel the same way. Quality brings people back, right?
Yeah.
So when people buy a printhead, which is one of our devices, and the printhead lasts a year, that's average, right, in our industry. But when our printheads last 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, it's amazing what you've birthed a customer that will stay with you a lifetime. Absolutely. Because quality, it builds that.
It does, and I think that's really an important feature of your company, to be able to have that, be able to strive for that, but achieve that, and be at that, and then hold it and keep it, and
that's
you can't
critical,
stop, and you got to keep moving.
Right. You've got the bullseye on you when you're leading the market. So.
Yeah, you're not gonna, you're right in the center of things. Your people are watching. Looking and sometimes your competition is looking to beat.
Absolutely,
that. So,
absolutely, and we welcome that.
Yeah. I like that too. I think we get into some of the we were talking about goals and outcomes that you're pursuing at this point. I know we want to talk about operations too. I don't know which order you want to tackle
Well,
that.
let's talk about goals first. So goals are fantastic, right? You got to know what you're striving to achieve. It's one thing to say we want to be the best in the world at something and we want to have the best quality, but then you need to take it down several layers from that. And that's what you got to do yearly or if you're going to be effective. So we have very discrete goals that fold up into higher level goals. So as it talks to things like market growth, we'll go into a particular region, let's say the Far East, and we'll say we want to achieve $50 or $75 million in the Far East in 4 years from where it is today. Or we'll talk then about layers below that as far as how do you make that 50 to 75 million happen. And it has so many steps to it, right? We'll do the same relative to quality. We'll talk about things like what's most important to our customers on a quality front. Well, one element, and I could talk about several, we'll just talk about one, is out of box. Think about that. When a consumer, when you and I pick up anything at the store, let's say it's a stereo, the last thing you want to do is get home, open that stereo and find out it's got a big scratch in the front or it's got a knob that's bent or whatever the case may be. It's critical in our industry as well. So we strive for an out-of-box failure rate of 0. We want our customers to be delighted when they open that box, and that's critical. Right now we're at 99.94% acceptance, but we're still not at 100. So that's the goal. Make it so when they open that box, it's extraordinary. Goals go farther than that. We have cost out. Cost out's critical. You talked about speed. It's relevant, right? Cost is just as relevant. Every year we try and take 6% out of our cost line. That's brutal. Companies that are most successful will tell you they've got to get cost out of their cost line every single year. 6% does not happen without great effort. So you get that in scrap reduction. You get that in continuous improvement initiatives that make you more efficient. You get that in material reductions and working with your supply base to find a better way to take cost out. And the list goes on and on. So every year we'll say 6% cost out, and there'll be 30 projects underneath that fold into that. We'll talk about this year, for instance, we had a major initiative that we started called our Information Architecture Initiative. We knew that we had grown to a very large state. We've doubled in the last 4 years, and that our information architecture had gotten strained. So we had to reinvent ourselves as it relates to information management. So we started a 3.5-year initiative that has many phases to it, and each of those phases is going out over the next 3 years to talk about how we improve our ability to manage information, use that information to grow our business. So those types of goals are critical, and we have them in spades. We always call it our top 10, and any of our employees will tell you that we have our quarterly all-hands meeting. And in our all-hands meeting, we go through our top 10, and we say, okay, it's report card time, and I say that to the kids around Lebanon. Report cards don't stop when you leave school, kids. It goes right out until the time you retire. Yeah. We have our report card. Every quarter, we pull our top 10 up and say, how are we doing on growing our business in Asia? How are we doing on delivering our information architecture? Are we falling short, or are we hitting our 6% goals out? Every quarter, we give ourselves a grade, and I'm proud to admit that the last 4 years, we've hit at about 85% of our top 10. It's incredible and speaks to the commitment that the people that we have at our company and here in the work ethic in the Upper Valley bring to my company.
They're really committed.
They absolutely are.
It's a self-directed commitment.
And it's almost, once you get the ball rolling, it's momentum, and we've got that right now.
That's great. That's really great. That's exciting. And I like the quarterly, where you had the whole organizational wide meeting and look at the fundamentals that you're trying to achieve in terms of your goals.
Absolutely.
Let's get into the nitty-gritty of some of the operations then, and because I think some of the stuff you're doing are just amazing here, and people don't know what's under the hood. And we give them a little insight on what might be under the hood.
So our business has really got two facets to it. We have 2 campuses that are operationally supporting the business. We have about 90,000 square feet here on Etna Road. And we also, interestingly enough, have just about the same square footage in California, 2 90,000 square foot campuses, and both comprise 4 buildings. We have 450-ish people here and about 250 out in California. Operationally, we go after 2 very different but related market segments here in New Hampshire. Number one is industrial printing devices, print heads for people that want a simple phrase. But it's not what you'd expect to see in your desktop printer at home. You know, the small office, home office, little cartridge.
Yeah, little cartridge.
We couldn't be farther away from that. An industrial print head is a big device. They're many thousands of dollars in some cases, all the way down to maybe $500 in some cases. But they're robust. They're intending to print in machines. So our biggest customers in that portion of our business are machine builders. So we sell our print heads to machine builders who can stack up 2 in a machine, 50 in a machine. In some machines, it can go up to 800 print heads in a single machine. And that single machine may be, 20, 30, 40 feet wide that has a big print carriage. And it's printing anything from advertisements. We're involved, as I said earlier, in tiles. The tile industry is fantastic. We're in textiles. We're in packaging. So that portion of our business continues to grow because it's fundamental that inkjet is becoming, I guess you could say, found again in certain industries, because you really could say we're a pump. We're a little pump that can. And it's going into all these new industries. So for years, advertising was 90% of our business if I go back to the late 90s.
Yeah.
Today, advertising is maybe 45% of our business, but we're 15 times larger than we were back then. But now markets that didn't even exist back then are part of our business, as I said, like ceramic tiles, printing on tiles, or textile. And textile's massive, right?
Yeah.
It's a carpet that we're sitting on here. It's the clothing you and I have on. It's car seats. It's silk ties. It's curtains. It's, oh my God, it's A to Z. And the thing that's fascinating to me, less than 2% of all of the output in textiles is solved by inkjet today. That means that 98% of that market is available for us to take, and that's our goal, to go take it. So operationally, we are constantly going after new markets, and that's where the second half of our business comes in. The first portion is the print heads. The second portion, much smaller, is our business that we call solutions, the Dymatix technology integration. Our solutions business is really tasked with going out with a solution instead of a print head. We don't go to a machine builder for this. We're now going in industries that didn't even think about inkjet as a solution before. And we have a small group that builds machines for them that goes typically to end users. Because of confidentiality, I can't give you the names of some of these end users, but I'll tell you they are household names. They're names of companies that you would say, oh my goodness, I didn't realize. And we're printing on things like diapers. We're printing on wood floors. We're printing on...
But you can use any media.
Absolutely. Solar panels. We're printing on food. We're printing on electronics and handheld devices. It goes on and on and on. And these are all new industries to inkjet. And our goal is to have each one of those industries fall in love with what inkjet can do. And eventually, if the worlds line up, become big major industries for us so our growth can continue.
That is really, really interesting. Who are your rivals?
Well, it's an interesting question because our rivals are not here in the States. I don't perceive it, not in the industrial side, right? Most of the people in print heads in the States are in the small office, home office, you know, HP or people like that. But our rivals are primarily Japanese, so Kyocera, Konica Minolta, these types of companies, along with Epson. Epson's one of the few that deals with the small office, home office, and they jump into the industrial side. Very capable competitors. I'd like to think each one brings a unique challenge to us. And I'd like to think that each one knows that we're number one right now.
Yeah, and that's interesting how you must work, you know, because I always think about who you're playing. Because I'm a great sports fan, you know. When the Warriors were playing the Atlanta Hawks last night, I was a fool enough to say.
Did you stay up and watch it?
They were the two best records, and so I like people with the best records.
Exactly.
So I came home from a city council meeting, and I drank enough coffee to stay awake during the council. No apologize to council. Not that they're boring. But I stayed up, and I watched because I wanted to watch how the two winning basketball teams, NBA, and I'm kind of a buff at that, how they play against each other. And the Warriors trounced them. The Warriors trounced them because the Warriors just had a different kind of vision about how they're going to do that game, and they did it, and it was really amazing. So when I talk about rivals, and that's why I was curious.
Well, I love our rivals. They make us better.
Because it seems like that would make you better.
They do.
If you
push us.
had no rivals, you might get, I don't know if you'd ever get lethargic. You guys, you don't look very lethargic.
Well, you get wired for success, but I will tell you, when you get into competitive environments and somebody chooses a competitor over you, you're desperate to find out why. What was it that tipped the scales to them? And that's fascinating when you find out, right? You'll find out in certain applications, maybe they had a little element to their head in that particular machine design that gave them a leg up that you didn't comprehend. So I think it makes us better.
That's nice. We have a couple of minutes left. I think this is a good time, in our last couple of minutes, it's just kind of what lies ahead. From your perspective, the company sounds so vibrant. You're up there, striving for number one. You are number one, and then you want to keep moving at that, and that's hard to do because it's just seems like human nature is the number one. Somebody's just ready to pull number one off and down.
So for us, what lies ahead, in my mind, is execution. If you can execute to a plan, you are so far ahead of your competition because there are so many things that get in the way. It gets cloudy out there, but you've got to find a way to push the clouds aside, force them aside, and execute to your plan. And if the plan needs to be adjusted, that's okay, right? You're constantly assessing whether or not you've got the right vision, but execution is key. Second, what lies ahead is I think, amazing growth. I believe the company, even though it's grown tenfold, just doubling in the last few years, I believe we will grow tenfold again over the next 20 years. So for us, we're investing in our community, what you and I enjoy up here. We're investing in our sites. We're bringing in the best minds around the globe, as well as people that have what you and I talked about earlier, which is attitude and aptitude. So for us, I believe the future looks incredibly bright. I couldn't be more excited about working for a company, and I couldn't be more pleased with the people that we've surrounded ourselves with up here.
Well, that is really, really positive thinking, and I think that's what makes your company go, is the positive nature of your company. And being, as I've characterized at the beginning of our show, a bright star here, and I just think about the trust you're building with your employees and your customers. What a terrific thing that is. I mean, that's trust building is being trustworthy and building trust is really
absolutely
fascinating situation.
It's critical.
And people coming back and I've always thought you can never violate that trust. The last thing you would want to do is violate the trust.
I couldn't agree with you more.
You're out of your box. Goals. That's wonderful. I mean, because the worst thing I would ever want is when I get a box from someplace and here I had it for a particular discrete purpose and then it's not working.
Exactly.
Or scarred, I have to send it back, or I have to
turn you off.
Anything as our final minute to go?
I think the only thing I would share with your viewers is if you're looking for excitement, we've got it. If you're looking for a career where the future is not certain other than we're going to throw things at you that are going to challenge you, are going to excite you, are going to bring you things that you didn't even know existed. If you're looking for an opportunity to be part of an organization that understands the work-life balance, because we do have that. We understand working hard and playing hard is important. If you want all those things as part of your future, we'd love to have you. Our hiring practices right now are stretched to, we've probably put on 40 people in the past 6 months. My goal is to continue every 6 months to have that kind of growth rate. It's probably not realistic, but the point I'm sharing with you is come and join us, be part of something special, and help us continue to be number one, as Greg said. People are looking out to bump us from our perch, and we just don't see that happening.
Well, with that, we're going to close the meeting. Now, there you have an opportunity. The one thing great about the Lebanon and the Upper Valley is it's just full of opportunities. I mean, I have seen it myself on many occasions. I hear you presented a great opportunity to join many other opportunities. Boy, if I had some children out there that I had thought might have some of the stuff that the right stuff that Jeff's talked about today, You know, let's tell them to wake up and smell all the roses, and it's time to get in there and try your hand at something.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thanks for coming. I appreciate it, Greg.
This is a good show. We enjoyed it a lot. Here we are in Lebanon, one of the best places in the world to live. Let's keep enjoying our wonderful city, and we hope to God that the weather breaks and we have a little warm spring.
Hear,
Take
hear.
care.
See ya.
Take care. Bye-bye.